Everybody. um, just gonna give this a few minutes to see if anybody pops in. Hi, Jake. Constitution Republic with capitalism is not a truly free society, even if it has issues that has to be tweaked for that. That's an interesting point. Constitutional. That's a very interesting point. So today I wanted to just come in and have a conversation with respect to hey Amy, with respect to as the video is titled, talking about democracy, autocracy, socialism, and capitalism, and how that is how's that shaping particular our country here. But I'm also very curious as to how it also how it affects us globally, right? Because we are a republic, we are a democratic republic, supposedly, where the citizens of each of the states elects the same members of the society to represent us in Congress, in the Senate, and we also elect a leader for a term of 4 years, for a maximum of 8 years, if that person gets elected for more than one term. And so I found that this year, well, not only these last 4 years, but this year in particular, really brings to bear that not everyone has the right. Everyone may have, how should I put this? Most people, well, no. If you are an American citizen, you have the right to run for president, right? But I think just because you have the right to run by virtue of your citizenship, that doesn't necessarily mean that you should run, or that should be the base qualification for you to be able to run. I think there needs to be some sort of a criteria, some sort of a baseline, what you call it, set of qualifications and skills that you need to have in order for you to be able to be eligible to run, not only in Congress, but also, more importantly, as the president of the United States. If these 4 years has not shown how critical it is that a person who serves in that office needs to have some level of knowledge and skill sets to be able to handle that office. um, I think, that is something that needs to be that is something that really needs to be looked at. I think we as the American people, hey, hey, human. I think we as the American people should voice uh, ourselves through our elected officials to be able to say what should be the criteria for running for the highest office in the land, since we are the one who elects those individuals, right? It is our collective voices. Well, it is a collective of majority of voices within each state um, that that actually grants a person the an appointment to the office of the presidency. And I think that there, at least in my opinion, I don't, whether my opinion means anything in the grander scheme of things. And I say that from a very biased lens. I'll admit that. I will admit that I'm making that comment um, to from a very biased lens, in that I think I really, really do think it would serve us better if there was some level of of skill sets and qualifications and a certain level of service that a president should have before they should be elected as president. I mean, for one, public service. If you want to be the president of the United States, you should have had some form of public service. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you were a congressperson, or you worked in Congress, but you've had some level of public service. I think that's very important, because if you've had public service, you tend to, I won't say always, as again, our Congress, many in our Congress has proven that you have a level of understanding of constituency, and you have a level of understanding um, ev- the bigger issues that we have domestically, right? Especially if you've had some in your home state, or whatever state you claim. I think that's important. I think there needs to be, and I also feel that public service, or some sort of nonprofit service, allows a person to exercise a level of empathy, right? You tend to have I don't expect that you will solve all of our domestic problems, or all of the world's problems. That that is not, I don't think that's feasible for a person. But I do expect that there should be some level of empathy. I think that you should be qualified in um, to be able to absorb a lot of information. You should be well versed in certain topics. You should, I mean, etiquette. There are certain etiquettes that you should be able to um, observe. I mean, again, I say this from a lens, and the lens that I say this through is from my military background. You know, in the military, we do have a chain of command, and there are certain levels of expectations that we have from the leaders in our higher echelon, right? And so we expect the commanders that we are serving under to have a certain level of qualifications to meet the demands of running an entire command. Um, Sorry, the fire stations. Sorry about that. Hey, Tuki. Yeah, so I wanted to just have a discussion with respect to how is democracy supposed to truly function for us here in the States? And I'm not really clear about how democracy runs in other countries. I know that it does. I mean, they do have a level of democracy, but I also know that that they seem to have a democracy that works for the majority of their citizens, and that the government that is put into place um, for most modern countries, it works well. Um, Let me know how it's dangerous, because I I'm not saying that I want our president to run the country like the military. That is not my point. My point is, I believe that our president should have a certain level of qualifications, and some have a background in certain things, in order to be able to be president on not only domestically but on a global stage. Um, and I wasn't saying that, again. I'm not saying, I wasn't giving the example of my commanding officers as a means of, that's what I expect the president to do, but just that um, there has to be some basic qualifications that a president should have in order to be eligible to run, other than you were born here. Like, you were born here. The mere fact that you ran a business, the mere fact you were born here shouldn't be um, shouldn't be like the main thing that you have going for you in order for you to run for the highest office in the land. Because you are our representative on the global stage. Most of what you More of what you do on the global stage affect us more so than a lot of what you do here in this country. Um, and I I think that you should have somebody that can um, take that into consideration on some levels. Um, but um, I'm not saying that I think that the president should make decisions for us. That's not what I'm saying. Most of the decision, well, and I say that, but you know, decisions are made in Congress. Decisions are made at the state and local level that affect our everyday lives anyway. I mean, and yet, and many and there's a few of us. Um, we can agree to disagree. I do give him credit in certain instances, but I don't give him credit as a whole. But I do give him credit in certain instances. But again, I mean, as I sit here, I cannot say that my life has gotten any better or improved in any way with him being in office. I can't say that. I have yet to hear anybody, unless you are someone who makes a lot of money or is in a field where you know where you benefit from a lot of the policies and regulations that have been changed. I don't see how everyday Americans have benefited from that in any way. And that's just from my own personal perspective. And I'll just give you one example how my life has not improved. My example is I am a disabled veteran, and Obama had enacted VA choice. Now, what VA choice is, for those of you who may not know, is there are certain things that we have a VA hospital where we can go to get most of our medical needs met. But there are certain things that, depending on the VA hospital that you are registered in, they may not be able to fulfill those. Um, uh, there's a lot of um, procedures and things that cannot be fulfilled at certain VAs. So you may have to go to an outside facility, right? Or if I need to go to the emergency room, my VA, the VA that I am registered in, is about an hour away from where I live. And so if I need to go to the emergency room, the closest hospital to me is 10 minutes away. And if I go to that emergency room, um, and they give me a prescription, it used to be I could get that prescription filled at my local either CVS or Walgreens, right? And the VA would pick up the tab. Well, 2 years ago, that option went away. If I go to an emergency room and they want to prescribe me medicine, I would have to get a I would have to get the facility or the hospital that I went to send a either to call in to my VA doctor so that my VA doctor can fulfill that prescription. That's one option. The other option would be that you see what section of my of the business section of the VA would have to register the hospital where I went to the emergency room, and to get the doctor's name specifically that I saw, to have them registered in the VA system, so that he or she can send the prescription in order for it to be fulfilled by my VA, and so that I can get it from the VA. That was not the whole point of VA choice. And when Trump when Trump became president. So that's just my own personal story. Like I totally saw how a lot of people's lives got, increased, but most of the people whose lives got better weren't everyday people like me. So I don't have anything that I can offer to say that, my life changed or my life got better with him in office. I was totally open to the idea of him being in office, but then again, Trump, if you're from New York City or if you're from New York in general, you know who Trump is. Like, he's been around since I was, a young child. Like, you know who Trump is, you know what he's about, you know about his dealings. Like, it's no secret for us here in New York. So we already know who this man is. We already know who he is, because and him becoming president really didn't sit well with me. But I was like, you know what? Oh, do a good job. But he ran his president. I was not surprised by the way he ran his presidency. I was not shocked by it by any means, because again, if you're from New York City, if you're from New York, especially, you already know who this man is. Like, I'm not surprised by any of his behaviors. I'm not surprised by any of his. My thing is, you are a public servant. You are a public servant, and you should be willing to be just as empathetic to a person who doesn't have a dime to their name, just as you are as empathetic to people who donate to you. Like, you should not, your self-preservation should not be the first thing that you think about. That should be the least of your worries. Your ego should be right out the door when you become a public servant, because you are not there to serve yourself. You are there to serve the people who elect you. And I get why a lot of people like him. I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. I get what it is that he does for a lot of people. I get how, he has a how he has such a following. And this is just from, again, I might be saying it from a very biased lens, but I don't feel that I am alone in my view of that. But I think our democracy has suffered, especially with this recent election. I did not agree with the way that the president handled it. I did not agree with the way that most well, you are one of the very lucky ones, Jake. You are one of the very lucky ones. There's a lot, like I said, I know that there's a lot of people who benefited from it, but the majority of us did not. The majority of us did not. There's a smaller percentage of people who benefited under Trump than not, that did benefit. So, not that many people saw any improvement in their life. Again, me being one of them, my life did not improve. It actually got worse, and that's just from and that's just one of the aspects in which my life did not improve. It it affected me in a huge major way, because last year this time I had to have surgery, and it wasn't small surgery, it was major surgery, and I couldn't get pain medication. It I could not get any pain medication. And I don't want to tell you, once those anesthetics and the pain meds that they give you in those IVs wear off, the level of pain that you feel is like nothing I could. It's like tears in my there was tears in my eyes, and I couldn't get my medication filled because of all of the bureaucracy of what VA choice was supposed to take away, was supposed to resolve. um I don't know. But I'm but I can totally um it admit that a lot of people did do well under Trump. I'm just offering the perspective that there are many of us that did not. And I will say it again, I don't agree with how his behavior. I totally do not agree with his behavior, because anyone else would have been flayed, but he got a pass. But then again, like I said, if you from here in New York, Trump, like, he is no surprise at all. Hi, Spots. Not from New York, but it's easy to see his flaws, even from a distance. I haven't liked him from the face, and definitely has such a cult following. Well, Spots, the cult follow. I don't really want to use the word cult, even though that is something that's being used more and more. But he is the one thing I will say about Trump, and nobody will ever take that away from him, because I admit that he is very masterful at that. He is a born marketeer. Like, if you need somebody, he understands branding, he understands marketing. He understands, like, if he was running an ad agency, he probably would have been the top copyright. Like, he truly has a master at marketing is, and what branding is, and how to reach an audience, and an audience, and how to manipulate that. He's very, very, very good at it. That is, like, most of the buildings that you see with Trump's name, he doesn't own them, but they pay him for putting his name on the buildings. He doesn't own any real estate. He doesn't own any of the buildings his names are on in New York. They just pay him for using his name. Like, that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. I don't have to own it, but you're going to pay me for using my name. He's very good at making sure that whatever he is in, that he will benefit from it. That's the way that essentially, that's how he operates. Hey, Tuki. Joe Biden just can't do it. I understand what you're saying. Again, listen, to me, I listen, I lived through the 90s. Okay. I totally lived through the whole 90s, the whole 3 strikes you're out, the whole busing, the whole the crime bill. I grew up in New York City. Okay. So I had firsthand I have firsthand experience with a lot of those things that they did from Reagan, from the Reagan era to the first George Bush to Clinton. I get it. I lived through that. But the one thing that I will say that I appreciate about Joe Biden is that he was willing to admit that he was wrong in doing that, and that he, at the time, he thought that he thought he was doing the right by his constituents. You know, I can say that, yeah, I think that's just an excuse. But if you're willing to publicly admit that you were wrong, and you are willing to make amends by actually putting real policies, and putting real action behind wanting to change, a lot of, a lot of the things that you did wrong, I'm willing to give you the chance to do that. um, I'm willing to give you the chance to do that. Um, I have my many issues with Trump, but there's a reason why most big money went to Biden. I can agree with that. I can agree with that. I, of course, there's always a lot of things that we listen. Let's not fool ourselves, right? There's a reason why Vladimir Putin has been interfering with our country elections, because he is trying to expose how this country is really no different, right, than his country, right? He runs an autocracy, right? Because Russia is governed by an oligarchy. Uh, I would dare say that that stems fairly true for this country. Yes, we have a democracy. Yes, we vote. Yes, we elect. But there's a lot of money that exchanges hands with respect to a lot of these elections. And I am not blind to that. I'm not naive to that. I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. Um, but I do know that there is, there are more and more um, officials, elected officials that are not going that route, that are not using big money in order um, to run campaigns and to get um, a election, to get elected. There are many that are able to do that, and a lot of times that is why I say repeatedly that people need to pay attention to officials and their local elections. Like that is very important, because it trickles up and then it trickles down, right? Who you elect on the lower level is gonna eventually affect the higher level, because the more people, like, that have like progressive views, and I'm not going to say that I'm a progressive, because I'm not, but I do like some of their messaging. I won't say I like their messaging so much. I like their ideas. I like what it is that they stand for. I don't I'm not personally, again, this is just my own personal opinion. I don't necessarily always agree with their messaging, but I do like a lot of a lot of the issues under which they run on, and what they want to do. Spots. Hold on a second. Let me look at some of these comments. I'm sorry. Um, Marketing flim flam. He's good at deception for profit. Yes, I can agree with that, Spots. Trump understands economics and has had a loyalty to this country. America has been robbed by the world for years. Um, to I You know what? I don't I don't agree with that comment, Jake, because I've seen the world stage, and let me tell you, America is not innocent in any way. And so the country being robbed, mm, mm-mm. Um, now, do we, there is a price to pay when you want to put your presence everywhere. There's a price tag that comes with that. And when you want to put your foot in every part of in almost every continent, you want to make your presence felt. That comes with a price tag. So I won't say that America has been robbed for years. It's just that the price tag for wanting to be in every corner of the world has increased. And so I wouldn't necessarily agree that America's been robbed for years. I don't agree with that because America likes to stick its hand in everything. It does. And even I would go so far as to say, even our president who speaks about being loyal to the country, and I think all elected officials are loyal to this country in some way, shape, form, or fashion, but they all have their hands in the global stage. They benefit from it. They benefit from a lot of those same places they keep saying that is robbing this country. They benefit from those foreign countries and those foreign markets. For example, a lot of the materials that we use to make a lot of things here in the States, a huge majority of it comes from China. A lot of the lithium that we use for a lot that comes from South America. Like every we put our presence in almost every part of the world, right? And if there is a country that doesn't seem to want to play with it, for some reason their country becomes unstable, and then here we go to kind of quote unquote try to bring stability. That is why we could never that's why we did not win in Vietnam, and that is why we did not win in the Middle East. And anybody who tells you that we won is lying to you. Let me tell you that we did not win in the Middle East. We were over there with this whole concept of changing hearts and minds. Mm. Who you I mean, mm, it's not the military establishment that wants our foot there. Remember, it's a matter of resources, right? Most of the countries that we have our presence in is because there is a resource in that region that we would benefit from. And it has nothing to do with the military wanting us there. It's just that the military is the path of least resistance of putting our presence there. That if I may be as so bold as to say that, and I say that as somebody who has served in many in the European theater, in the African theater, um, you know, I our presence in those regions is not necessarily about it's not it has nothing to do with us. We're just the tools that they use in order to do it. That is We are the tools that are used to do that. And it's easy, I don't want to say it's easy. It gives the appearance that, the military are the ones that make those choices and those decisions. But the truth is, we do not. Um, you know, the president is, the commander in chief of the military. We don't make those decisions. We don't go to, our military, the joint chiefs of staffs, the secretaries of each branch doesn't go to the president and say, hey, we need to go here. It's the other way around. They are given marching orders, and then they disseminate it down. And then a mission is given for when we reach those regions. And then we have to accomplish that mission, whatever that mission may be. But most of the time we do, we sometimes we do humanitarian missions as a way of gaining hearts and minds. And in gaining hearts and minds, we then hope to establish a relationship with that particular region. But the truth is, not every country is interested in being a democracy. It's not every region wants a democracy. Not every region wants to be another United States. Not every region cares to be another United States. Not every region cares about, it's that it has nothing, that is the reason why we were not successful. you know we weren't really successful in the Middle East, in my opinion, because that is not their culture. They have a culture that they've had for centuries. And then, we want to come in and tell them that they need to be democratic. That is the reason why they hate us so much, because we tend to look as if we're coming into their country and telling them that they're backwards in how they live, and that we are here to modernize them. Like, who are we to do that? That is why we are disliked in a lot of these regions. And yes, you can say there's probably a small population that does benefit from, us being there. But for the most part, there are a lot of countries who don't give a rat's behind about America, or about the United States particularly. You know what I mean? Like, don't come. It's the attitude, to me, translated to, don't come to our country telling us how to run it. Don't come here telling us how we should do things. Just because we don't do things the way that you do it doesn't make us inferior, and doesn't make us any lesser. And I believe that is that was how it came across. Again, I'm just going by my own personal experience. Let me read some comments here. Let's see. Bush's daddy, Clinton, Bush, Obama were established politicians. They let the world rob us. Biden will be no different. I guess I would need to ask you, how was this country robbed? Maybe I need to understand that part of it first. Maybe you can explain to me, Jake, what is it that these other countries did that robbed us? How did they rob us? And maybe that might help me to understand those comments. Libra, Russia has 13 billionaires. The US has 113 in New York alone. I know, right? Hmm. Spots. China can only rob us with the complicity of American and global corporations. Uh, Jake, I'm all for firing all 535 members of Congress and starting over. Congress is the true problem. That is why it's important to vote at your local level. Vote, you shouldn't be only voting every 4 years or every 2 years. Like the presidency and the Senate should not be the only elections that you should be voting on. You need to pay attention to your local elections. Who's running for governorship? Who's running for your state leadership? Who's your state senators? Who are your state representatives? Who are your district representatives? Who are the judges that are running in your district? Who is the comptroller? Who is the mayor? All of those matter. Like who is running as a U.S. representative to Congress in your district? Those are elections that you need to be paying attention because we are the one that elect them. And a lot of times, when most of these people get elected into Congress, a lot of times you don't even know that they were up for re-election. Why? Because they don't feel the need to have to campaign because there's barely anybody that runs against them. And if there is somebody running against them, nobody pays attention enough to go out and vote. And so these people get elected over and over and over and over and over again. They don't even feel the need to have to run. It wasn't until Alexandra Ocasio decided that she was going to run. Now it's inconsequential. He was an incumbent, longtime U.S. representative of the district that she was in, and she won by an upset again. Representative Ingle, when he ran against, I believe his name was Jamal Brown, I can't remember. He blatantly said like he only came out for the sake of a photo op. Like he wasn't even bothered about trying to run because it's been his past experience that he's always got elected. It didn't matter who challenged him. He always got elected. So I think the path on that we have been going through now of being more aware and paying more attention to who for office in respect. I think paying attention to that will slowly start to change the landscape of Congress. You know what I mean? But it starts with us. We are the ones that have to effect the change that we want to see. And that means we need to be engaged and involved in who we elect. Prophet is God. Tuki, I just believe Trump would have ran as a Democrat. The Black community would have backed him so hard because before he ran, he was the most talked celebrity rap. There's a lot of Black people who still voted for Trump. Don't get it twisted. There were a lot of Black people who voted for Trump just for the mere fact, if for no other reason, because of his celebrity. I agree with Spots, but we can't have free trade with a country that essentially has slave labor. That is another thing, right? That is another thing. We cannot talk about China having slave labor and we still have not resolved the issue of slavery in our country, because that's the way that they look at us, right? And let's talk about Indian reservations. We took an entire indigenous population who were here first. This was their country. And we came here and just told them, you can have this plot of land. We're just going to take the rest. Like we we have had internment camps for the Japanese during World War II. We can't we cannot think to talk about what other countries do when we ourselves have not resolved a lot of what we have done here in this country, that people are still suffering the after effects from. So I agree that we should not conduct trade with countries that have slave labor. The Uyghurs are essentially being enslaved because they're Muslim, from my understanding. And so, but again, at the same token, that is what the Chinese spit back at us. Like, how are you going to tell us about slavery when you haven't even resolved your issues of slavery? And they go back and list all of the times that we've had some form of slavery in our country. And, we still to this day do have a certain form of slavery, because being working a minimum wage job is not some form of slavery. I don't know what to say, because people in this country can't make a lot of people in this country don't make enough money working one job to be able to put a roof over their head and food on the table, just working one job, and are forced to have to work multiple jobs to survive. And we are, quote unquote, the richest country in the world. How make that make sense? Make that make sense. So, Trump had 4 years to raise the minimum wage to $15. He chose not to do that. So did Obama. So I don't think we had a minimum wage increase until Clinton came in. And before that, I think it was Carter. So make that make sense. Make it make sense. It doesn't. It doesn't make sense at all. There's no reason where we are in this modern age, in this modern country, where we still have homeless people. We still have people who have to work 2 to 3 jobs just to survive. Anyway, let me get off that soapbox. Amy, my main excitement for a Biden administration is that he will appoint people in the State Department who knows what they're doing. The China policy under Trump has been horrendous. Yes and no. I mean, did those trade wars really benefit us in some way? If they did, I don't know how. But, he's the man who is supposed to be the greatest deal maker, but I haven't seen any deals that he's been directly involved in. And to Jared Kushner's credit, Jared Kushner has done some really good things with respect to some foreign policies. I don't believe in all, but I think he just stuck to what he in the areas of where he was a little bit more well versed. Maybe he did well, but I wouldn't credit Trump for that. I would probably more so credit Jared Kushner for it more than I would credit Trump. But I do credit his administration as a whole, since this happened under his administration. But it hasn't changed the issue in Yemen at all. Like, Yemen is still getting bombed and attacked. We just recently had this whole attack. We had an assassination happen in Iran. He pulled out of the Iran deal, which, anyways, let me get off that soapbox. Jake, I agree. I'm not suggesting America is innocent. I don't want our foot in every continent. The military establishment wants our foot there. Oh, I already addressed that. Spots. I'm not opposed to buying raw materials. I don't think nobody's opposed to buying raw materials, but we should do it fairly, and we shouldn't have to destabilize an entire country in order to benefit from their materials. That's just the point I'm making. We don't have to, there doesn't have to be a show of force in order for us to get the best deal. Like, and too many times we have been involved in coup attempts. And too many times, what? Just for the sake of getting materials, resources? And the people that suffer are the people of that country. The everyday people of that country are the ones that suffer. And my thing is, you need to take care of your own backyard before you go rummaging in other people's backyards and telling them how dirty it is. That's just my opinion. Take that with a grain of salt. Icy Spot example. I never thought NAFTA was fair from the start. Like, all FTAs, other countries don't have labor and safety laws for workers, therefore can make goods cheaper. This is true, which is why we outsource pretty much almost everything, because they don't have those same laws and safeties. They don't have unions. They don't have a lot of the things that most of these big corporations and businesses don't want. They don't want their employees to be unionized. They don't want them to have those type of worker protections. That's why a lot of businesses outsource, because they don't have to deal with that, or they prefer not to deal with that. You know, a lot of unions have died off because of that. And if you're a union worker, you know, I don't know, but you know, unions unions are a whole conversation in and of themselves. We should insist the playing field is even before implementing FTAs, but that won't happen because business will profit. Exactly. The economy can increase wages. I think the minimum wage should be $25 an hour at a minimum. In today's economy, minimum wage should be 25, not 15. What is $15 in today's $15 is nothing. $50 is nothing. You know, that's just my own personal opinion, but $15 as a minimum wage is nothing. Or I think they should institute minimum wage based on the region that you live in. Maybe $15 in Florida or in some other state might be great, but in New York, $15 is crap. You can't live off of $15 an hour in New York. I doubt that you can live on $15 an hour in California. And I'm sure there's a lot of states where $15 an hour doesn't do much for you. So I don't think that there should be but I guess there has to be some sort of a federal, I think they should do it by region. I think they can create some sort of policy, or there could be a bill that is introduced where the minimum wage should be increased based on the region that you live in. I think that would be the the more fair thing to do. Okay, I'm saying that the Trump admin has been awful for China policy. What? Oh, okay, all right. Hey, hey, OTDA, thank you. I don't need a policy to make more money. Tell your boss. Supply and demand determines wages too. Um, Again, I may have to disagree with you on that because um, businesses, they let me, and I'll say this: a business is not going to pay you any more than they have to, right? And they will, and most businesses um, will do an incremental increase based on your seniority, right? Meaning the amount of time that you are an employee. And if you get a raise, or if you get promoted, and of course, with that promotion comes with an increase of pay. But my thing is, there has to be a base minimum that you should start off as. I don't agree that those wages should not be negotiated. Every American should have a base amount that they start off as for work, and it should be an amount that allows them a living wage. Like coming in and get like coming in and working at $7.25 as a grown person, trying to make a living, and you're not necessarily a skilled worker. How is that? And if I were to try to negotiate, do you think that if I were to say, I've been here for 5 years, I would like to negotiate my pay to be $15? Most of those employees are at will employees. They're not salaried, right? They're at will employees, meaning at any given time, the employer may decide, oh, I'm going to cut your hours because, and they'll give you some sort of policy that they instituted to give them a reason to cut your hours. Or they might say, you know what, it's probably in our best interest to go ahead and let you go because of XYZ, right? Most of the people who work minimum jobs are at will employees. They're not salaried employees. So for all of those people who work by the hour, who get paid by the hour, they should have an amount that will allow them to be able to live with their basic needs. They shouldn't have to work 2 to 3 jobs in order to meet. It's easy to say that people should learn a skill, right? But we have to be cognizant that not everybody is in a position to be able to do that. And we have to also be empathetic to those people who don't have that option available to them. Not everyone can get a skilled job, right? But also in that same vein, there's a lot of skilled workers, again, who work by the hour, who don't make unless they're working for some sort of company who chooses to practice good ethics and pay their employees a good livable wage. But there's not a lot of corporations that want to do that. There are not a lot of companies that want to do that, and that there are a lot of small businesses that can't do that at the moment they're just starting out. And the majority of people who employ are small businesses, right? But they have, depending on the region where their business is located, I don't know what their overhead is, right? And it's easy to say, well, they should do this and then they should do that. I'm very careful about seeing that because I'm not in their operation. I don't see what they're doing every day. I don't know what the costs are. I don't know what their liabilities are um with respect to running their business. So I don't want to get into the, well, they should do this business. And at the same token, I also don't want to disparage those people who work hourly jobs, by telling them that they should do better or get a different job. Not everybody has the option of getting a different job, and there's probably a lot of people who have tried to get a different job but have not been successful. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why a person is forced to list, like, and I'm probably sure this is true for today. There are a lot of young adults who went to school, got their 4-year degree, some got a master's degree, and yet was not able to find a job for their level of education. So they had to take something that pays a lot less, right? So even those that have gotten formal education, even those that have gotten and learned a skill, even some of them are not even able to work in those things that they studied and learned because there there was nothing for them to get. There was no job for them to go and get. So they were forced to do a plan B and work outside of what they originally went to go learn in order for them to be able to, you know, put food on their table, to put a roof over their head. So it's not it's not just black and white, go learn a skill and then get a job. Who says that that's how that works? It doesn't work like that for everyone. It doesn't. It really, really doesn't. There's some people, they apply for a job. Well, I'm gonna use New York as an example because this is where I live, right? In New York, if you want to get a job with the city, right? If you want to get a job with the city or you want to get a job with the state, a lot of those jobs require that you take an exam, right? So let's say you're very skilled, you've worked in a particular field, you have the necessary skill set for that for the position that you are taking the test for. You take the test, you pass the test, right? So what would preclude, once you've passed the test, and there is a minimum amount of time where you would get a notification to tell you that you passed the test and that you are going to be set to be interviewed for a particular position. That's not how that works. Most people are on a waiting list for 4 to 5 years before they even get a call that says, hey, we got an opening for you to come and interview for the job. You took that test 5 years ago. So between the time that you took the test and then the time that they call you 5 years later, what are you supposed to do? What you're going to do is you're going to get something. You're going to get something in the interim, right? You're going to get a job in the interim that's going to allow you to be able to live. The point I'm making is there should be a base minimum that is substantial enough that allows people to be able to live a good quality of life. And it shouldn't be seen as a handout. I'm an American. I live here. The money that I earn, I pay taxes on that money, right? So it's not like I'm shirking some sort of responsibility, that I'm taking something out of somebody else's mouth in order to put it in mine. It's just my basic right as an American that I should be able to have a livable wage that allows me to actually live. And I shouldn't have to work 2 to 3 jobs to accomplish that. If I decide that the wage that I'm more earning, I want to make more, then it's up to me now to say, okay, um, here is my path to advancement, right? Here's my career path, for me to move to the next level, however many levels, depending on whatever career path you have or whatever company that you work in order for you to try to achieve. I think everybody has a certain level of skill, but then again, it also has to do with the region that you live in, right? Um, and also, there are a lot of positions that are available that require that you have a minimum level of experience before they'll hire you. So let's just say that I went to school to learn how to be. I went to school to go learn how to be um, a mechanic. Let's just say I went to school to learn how to be a mechanic, right? So I go to school, I learn how to be a mechanic. Great. I got my certification. So now I have to go apply. So most of the places that I'm applying require that I have at least 3 to 5 years experience. I just graduated from my vocation, my trade school. So now I have to keep looking for someplace to hire me in order for me to use the skills that I've just learned. And there are a lot of places that are looking for people that are already experienced. That is something that happened to a lot of, over the past few years, to a lot of people who went to go learn a skill or who went and got a degree. A lot of them, came out with, with their skills, with their learned, with their diplomas and their certificates and all that other stuff. But most of the places that were hiring required that people had experience. Well, how am I supposed to get experience if you don't hire me? How? Somebody hire me in order for me to get the experience? How does that work? How am I supposed to get experience if you don't hire me for me to get that experience? You're already looking for somebody that has experience, but you're not willing to invest the time to teach me so that I can gain the experience. I'm obviously teachable because I just graduated. I did well enough to meet the requirements in order for me to for this document says that I'm able to perform the functions of a mechanic. All I need is for somebody to hire me in order for me to perform that function. But, uh, hey, Santavia. The American middle class has a higher standard of living than 95% of the world. Well, it all depends on what you consider middle class. It used to be back in the 90s, middle class was somebody who made, 60,000, 70,000, dare I say $50,000 a year. That used to be middle class. Nowadays, middle class, you got to be making six figures to be considered middle class nowadays. And the middle class are the ones that pay the bulk of taxes. If you are a salaried worker who makes middle class income, you pay a bulk of taxes. That's one. Second, if you are below that, you pay the bulk of taxes. So it's the people who make, you know, more money who pay less taxes because they run corporations, they run businesses, so they can write a lot of things off to lower their tax liability. Most businesses either pay their taxes quarterly or they pay their taxes at the end of the year, where they go ahead and write off all of their liabilities, and then it lower their amount of income that can be taxed. For a person who earns a salary, your taxes are taken off top before you even see a check. And yes, you might get, a return at the end of the year, depending on how you filled your W-4. You might get a return at the, when it's time to file taxes, but it's nothing in comparison to probably what you paid over the year. I don't know. People should learn a skill. I agree people should learn a skill, but not everybody has that option. I'm just saying the answer to higher wages is a strong economy. Any market manipulation will eventually lead to a correction. It's a valuable practical knowledge is a profit. Yes, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. Most If you are in the service industry, you'll do well. You will do well if you are providing a service if you are providing a service, you will make money. Case in point, Amazon. Why do you think Amazon? Why do you think Jeff Bezos is right now? Why? Because he provides an excellent service through Amazon. He provides an excellent service through Amazon. Why do you think Uber Eats does well? DoorDash does well. They provide a service. If you are in the service industry, you will do well. This is way too complex to type out. Maybe we'll have a conversation about this stuff. I would love to have a conversation, Jake. I would definitely. Maybe you can come on with me the next time I have one of these, because I plan on doing this at least maybe once, if not once a week, once every other week. So I would love to have you come on and we could have this discussion, because I think it's good for us to have these conversations and differing points of views, because maybe you might be able to teach me something that I don't know everything. I'm not going to profess to be that knowledgeable, because I speak from a point of view of my own personal lived experiences, from what I see, from what I learned. So, but I don't know, my circumstance is not somebody else's circumstance. And I totally understand that. And I can understand why a person may have a different point of view or perspective, because, just because I had, something affects me one way doesn't mean that it's going to affect you a certain way. I respect that my dad has practical knowledge. That being said, me being able to read, write Chinese is also valuable. Neither is more important than the other. Both are needed. I agree. I agree. Not sure that arbitrary increase of minimum wage is the answer. Fundamentally, cost price need to be fair. A drug that costs 5 cents to make should not cost you 100 times that much. That's where capitalism come in, right? Because in most other countries, you're not going to pay that much for drugs. But most other countries have a social social system where healthcare is a right of every citizen. The country pays for the cost of your care. So here in America, I think we're the only country that your healthcare is tied to your ability to be employed, and you have to work a minimum amount of hours to even be eligible to get healthcare, and you have to pay for it. And your drug and because most insurance companies are the ones that subsidize the medications or whatever drugs you need, there's some medications you're not even going to be able to, your out of pocket cost is astronomical. But then again, that requires that a lot of changes need to be made to our healthcare system here in the United States. which is why I don't understand why there's so many people who are against a single payer system. My thing is, we pay taxes. We pay federal taxes. All of us all people who work and earn money, you pay some form of federal taxes. Why shouldn't my federal taxes grant me the right of health care? Why should my employer be the one that provides for my health care? Why? Because my employer, you know, decides to the business goes belly up. Now I lose my health care. I don't think that's right. But then again, I don't understand why people are so upset about having, Medicare for all, when at some point when you retire, you're going to get Medicare. So what difference does it make if you get it when you're born compared to you get it when you're close to death? Like, I don't get that. I don't understand what the big deal is. You're going to benefit from it. I don't know. I don't. I'm not. And spots. I'm not suggesting that there should be some sort of arbitrary number. I think that is why I said I think that it should be done by region, because my cost of living here in New York is not going to be the same as the cost of living in Kentucky. I think it needs to be based on the region where you live, but as long as the minimum that you're making allows you to be able to, live and meet all of your basic needs without having to, feel like you have to get two jobs in order to do that. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that, oh, let's just, and that'll solve everything. I think they need to really take a really good look at different regions and different parts of the country, and come up with some sort of a economic plan that will address what a living wage actually means to an everyday American person. As long as I can pay the rent, bills, and eat, I should be able to do what makes me happy. I shouldn't have to learn how to do something practical according to the majority. Um, okay, so there's different types of skills that a person learns, right? There are practical skills and hands-on skills that people learn, and then there are different skills that are more on the let's just say on the upper end, right? It doesn't mean that one person's is any different than the other, but you are paid according to your skill level, right? Let's say a doctor is going to make a certain amount of money more so than probably, let's say, a person who does construction, right? It And then there within construction, there are, depending on your particular skill set, people that make a certain amount of, that make a certain amount of money compared to other skill sets within construction. So it's based on your level of whatever skill set you have, and you're paid according to that particular skill set. Whatever you choose to do, I, do that. My thing is, it shouldn't matter. But there are people that have to work those lesser skilled jobs. There's people that have to work those jobs. You know what I mean? And most of the time it's, mostly immigrants that work a lot of those lower paying jobs, or people who don't necessarily have the ability to be able to get to learn a particular skill set for whatever reason, that work a lot of those minimum wage jobs. And so my thing is, it you should be I mean, my I'll use this as an example. I like to use I like to use the examples. I think they help me to prove, or not necessarily prove my point, but to make my point. I remember here in New York, back in the day, where I could go and get a Big Mac meal and it wouldn't even cost me $5. It didn't even cost $5 to get a Big Mac meal. A hamburger was 10 cents. I'm telling my age, but y'all already know how old I am. A hamburger was 10 cents. 10 cents. Now, fast forward, 20 years now? The price of McDonald's, the price of getting a Big Mac meal now is like $15, $20. Sometimes they'll give you a deal, but for the most part, it's like $15 to $20 that you're going to pay for a Big Mac meal. But yet, the wages that a lot of these employees are working, you mean you're still going to pay me the same? But the cost is increasing. Taxes increase. You know, your state tax increases after a certain amount of time. Public transportation increases. When I was a little girl, it was 10 cents to ride the bus. I've seen it go, and then it used to be free on Sundays, right? Here in New York. Again, I'm telling my age, but again, y'all know how old I am, right? I saw it go from 10 cents to 25 cents to 50 cents to 75 cents to $1, $1.25, $1.50, $2. It's now, I think it's like now it's up to $2.75 now. But yet, the minimum wage hasn't increased. I mean, and it's not to say that the same person that was working a minimum wage job is still working that same minimum wage, but because minimum wage jobs have high attrition, right? Because most people, they'll work a minimum wage job for a period of maybe five to 7 years, and if they are lucky, they will level up, right? But there are people who work minimum wage job for their entire life. Like my grandmother was a factory worker, and she worked at a factory until she retired, working minimum wage. And back then in the 70s, I think minimum wage was like $3.15. Now minimum wage is like $7.50. I don't know. Spots. I negotiated wage and benefit contracts since 1977 and saw healthcare costs rise from $0 a month cost to $3.50 a month. Not the fault of union or company. Healthcare providers started a price gouging trend. I can't believe that. Listen, healthcare is $1 billion business. Do you know where hospitals make most of their money? Elective surgeries. Elective surgeries. That's where they make most of their money. I went to the, and I'll give you an example. I went to the emergency room and ended up having to stay in the hospital for 3 days, I think it was. 3 days. My bill for those 3 days was over $13,000. Like, that's because your money has less value. Printing money has effects. I can agree with that. I can definitely agree. But then again, we live in a country where we are encouraged to live beyond our means. That is encouraged. We are encouraged to spend money. We are encouraged to that, we need this or we must have that in order for us to truly live. And so, you know, financial education is not necessarily taught in, like, I remember going to school and having economics and business class and all those other things. I don't know if they still have those things in schools, or maybe they only have them in certain schools. I don't know. But, there needs to be some sort of, those things probably need to be reintroduced. We need to have, I think certain skill sets should be taught in our public schools, to, so that, most students, most of these students who are in middle school and in high school, a lot of the things that they learn are what's preparing them to go to college. And I think there's and not only just college but beyond, because there's some kids who graduate from high school and don't go to college. Some of them go to the military, some of them go to some sort of vocational schools, some of them go to union schools, some of them go to a trade school, or some of them may already have had the option of for working in a particular organization that did not require them to have to go to any school, because they've already been attached to a particular organization that allows them to be able to work. So I think, because we live in a very capitalistic country, there's a sort of really sick, deranged obsession with making money and having wealth and having material things. There's a huge obsession with that. And unfortunately, that's the society, especially now in the age of social media, that is the society we live in. How can we hold our democratic leaders accountable to making sure that there is a shift in a lot of the things that are being, in how the country is functioning? Because right now it's a dysfunctional chaos, in my opinion. And we need to come to some sort of balance. We need to rebalance ourselves. So there needs to be some way that our elected officials, how we can voice what the concerns are and hold them accountable to make sure that they meet the demands of everyday Americans. And I say everyday Americans in the sense that people who have wealth and have money don't have the same concerns as a person who, is making ends meet. You know what I mean? They don't have those same concerns. And so I think the elected officials who are beholden to whoever their donors are, should also be very cognizant of the people that they represent in whatever district or state they're in. Most insurance companies are deeply vested in the medical field. They essentially taking money out of one pocket and putting it into another. Yes, because you have private health and you have public health. And, those two things don't mix for some reason. And we learned that the hard way during COVID, especially here in New York. And so, our whole medical system, our whole healthcare system is all screwed up. It is foobarred, to use the terminology from Tango and Cash. It is foobarred, and it needs to be fixed. It needs to be fixed on a local level, on a state level, and on a federal level. It all needs to be fixed. I can get an ultrasound for my cattle for $10. Get one from one of my kids with the same ultrasound machine. It's $2,000. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous. If you're expecting the government to be more efficient than the private sector, listen, I'm beyond. I've already, made my peace with that. But I still think that there is a way for us to be able to hold them accountable. Like we cannot just say that and then just leave them to their own devices. We have to be more engaged. There has to be a way for us to be more engaged as a country to hold our elected officials to the fire. They have to know that if they are not performing, they got to go. It's because they don't have a fear of losing anything. We need to make them realize that they are there by the good graces of the people who elect them there. And just as quick as they got elected, they cannot be elected again. We need to hold their feet to the fire. We have to pressure them. We have to make them realize, you know, don't get that comfortable. You got work to do and you should be working on our behalf. There's a movement to get health insurance for pets. If it happens, it will cost much to treat your dogs as your kids. Prices for veterinary care will skyrocket. I'm glad you mentioned that because I did mention that I wanted to get a Yorkie as an emotional support dog, and I'm very well prepared that and one of the things that I had to consider is I'm going to have to get pet insurance. It's probably going to cost me a lot of money to be able to have a pet. And am I you know you know don't let insurance companies invest into medical. Make them truly compete. Competition is the only way to lower costs. They need to change the listen. I i just i am of i am of the mind that we need to have Medicare for all. That's just my humble opinion. I believe that healthcare should be a right of every American citizen. Every American citizen should have the right to health care. It should not be tied to your employment. That's just my opinion. There are just certain things that should be a right by virtue of you being an American citizen. They should be a right. You having a home, you having a place to live should be a right. You having health care should be a right. It should be a right. Those are basic needs. They should be a right. I mean, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the bottom is food, shelter, safety. I think a lot of the problems that we see, especially in lower income communities, we wouldn't see them if Maslow's hierarchy of needs was met. Shelter, safety, food, water. I mean, the basic needs. Hey, Alan. If a lot of those basic needs were met, there would be a lot less anger and frustration for a lot of people. People shouldn't go into debt for medical care. People shouldn't have to go into debt. Shouldn't have to file for bankruptcy because of a medical issue. People shouldn't, go broke. People shouldn't lose their homes because they had a medical emergency and they have medical debt. I I just don't think that's right. I don't think that's right. Minority. My dog keeps keeps you sane. Well, not completely sane, but saner. Yeah, I truly want. Yeah, I need something. I think I need something. In '98, they tried to amend the Constitution to make healthcare a right. The people said no by passing the people. By passing the people isn't by passing the people isn't acceptable. And that's what I don't understand. I don't understand why there's this there is a group of our population who thinks that there's something insidious about having healthcare be a right. I don't understand that. You're gonna benefit from the same thing that you're fighting against. I heard somebody argue, "Oh, you should earn it." What? I should earn healthcare? I should earn healthcare. Make that make sense. I should earn healthcare. Something that should be a basic right. And if we had healthcare for all, a lot of people who have a lot of medical issues probably wouldn't have them. Why? Because a person who has to pay for healthcare, more than likely than not, will avoid going to the hospital because the first thing they're going to think about is, how much is this going to cost me? People go to work sick. Why? Because they can't afford to go to the hospital. And so by the time they do make it to the hospital, their condition has gone so far that they end up having to pay anyway. And so I don't know, man. I don't know. That's just, I think democracy, there needs to be some balance where democracy benefits every citizen, not just some citizens. And the way that democracy is working as of late, only a few people benefit, not everyone, and it should be everyone benefiting. And it shouldn't matter, where you come from, what your background is. You should have the right to certain basic human rights. And I think healthcare is a basic human right. Medicare cannot negotiate with pharma for price. Well, I think if we were to have Medicare for all, and the government were the ones that were competing, then that would tremendously, kind of make that the great equalizer. Because if the government is the one that's negotiating the price for medications, and a lot of these pharmaceutical companies would have to compete to get that government contract, right? Because if the government is flipping the bill for everybody, they're going to be a little bit more fiscally disciplined about how much money they're being charged for medications. Case in point, they've now made it, I think they're getting ready to pass legislation where you can get medications from Canada, because medications in Canada are way cheaper, and they have a social healthcare system. And it's the same exact medications we get here. So how is it that they are able to have a social healthcare system, right? They have a healthcare system as a right for each of their citizens, and they are able to provide affordable prescription drugs. But we here, we not only do we pay for healthcare, we pay an exorbitant amount for healthcare. We also have to pay an exorbitant amount for medications. I think if the government were the ones that had to negotiate the prices, we wouldn't have to pay that much money. We wouldn't. There is no law preventing somebody from paying from somebody else's medical from somebody else's medical care. Imposing that you deem moral on other people is zealous. I like the error on the side of freedom. Again, I guess that's one point we can agree to disagree on as well. I believe that healthcare is a basic human right. That's just the point that I'm trying to make. I don't think it's right that people have to pay for healthcare out of their pocket. I pay taxes. I pay taxes. I am a contributing member of society. I pay taxes. I should, healthcare should be a basic right to me. It should. That's all my taxes pay for so much. Why can it not pay for my healthcare? It pays for me to have emergency services. Well, to a certain degree, right? It pays for me if I have an issue and I call 911 and 911 will come to me, but I still have to pay for the ambulance bill. Go figure. My thing is, if I pay for that social service, why can't they also flip the bill for the ambulance as well? It should be a basic human right. It should be a basic human right is all I'm saying. I don't see why the taxes that we pay should not subsidize our or pay for healthcare for everyone. I mean, we pay for everything else. And probably there's some things that we pay for that we could do without. Under current law, the Secretary of HSS is prohibited from negotiating lower drug prices on behalf of Medicare Part D beneficiaries. This is called the non-interference clause. They need to change that. They need to change the policy. They need to change that. They can change that. They can change that. There's nothing that prohibits them from changing that law. There's nothing. I don't see anything that prohibits. I'm sure there's nothing that says that they cannot change it or modify it or amend it. All laws can be amended to some degree or some fashion. I want some form of national health insurance, but cost needs to be fair. Lobbyists for AMA and pharma stop competition. That's why we don't have Medicare for all. Again, this is something that this is a bill that can be introduced and agreed on by our elected officials, and that would change it. That would change it. It's, it's like we're saying that we don't have control over, that the government doesn't have any control or that we don't have any control. It's just like saying we don't have any control. We can exercise, they can exercise control on our behalf. We elected them to do that. Laws can be amended. They can be amended. That's why we have amendments. By virtue of the fact that we have amendments to the Constitution, laws can be amended. I think government should be much smaller, especially the federal government. Nothing is free. Your taxes will go up. Taxes go up anyway. Taxes go up every year. That's why the IRS publishes the Pub 17 every tax year, because every tax year your taxes go up. That's just nature of the beast. It goes up. So if I'm gonna pay an increase in taxes anyway, why shouldn't a portion of my taxes pay for my health care? It's like two things you don't escape: taxes or death. You're gonna pay some form of tax, and we all die. Like we need to hold our elected officials to the fire. Like, we have to make this democracy work for all of us, for all of us. Will we all agree on everything? No. There is no expectation that everybody will agree. But what we can say is it has to be a system that works for everyone, not just for some. It's not fair that it works great for some, but then there's a whole other population of people that suffer. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. It should work for everyone. Everyone should be able to benefit. I'm not saying that I should benefit the same as the next person, but I should have some benefit that allows me to be able to live, you know, have my basic needs met. Like, I shouldn't be made to feel bad for wanting my basic needs met as a citizen of this country. I shouldn't be made to feel some kind of way about that. That's not fair. That's not right. That's not right. Every citizen should have their basic needs met. A lot of those things should be rights, not privilege. Having a license to drive a vehicle, that should be a privilege, right? That shouldn't be an automatic right. Me having healthcare should be a right, not a privilege. OTDA, that's like the dentist in Mexico. What's a $12,000 procedure here done in Mexico for $1,000 with better equipment and more knowledgeable and better surgeons than we have here? Same in Canada. Exactly. And they all have social healthcare systems. They all have social healthcare systems. So I don't understand the argument of why we cannot also have a social healthcare system. I don't see how that argument flies. I don't, and again, I will respectfully agree to disagree with anybody who says that we can't have a social healthcare system. Like, how is that gonna directly affect you in a negative way? You already pay taxes. Your taxes go up every year if you're somebody who earns a salary or works an hourly job. Your taxes go up every year. Unless you're somebody who's self-employed and or have the ability to write off your liabilities in order to lower your tax liabilities. But for most everyday Americans, they're not self-employed, or they don't own their own business, or they're not, or you know what I mean? They're salaried, or they are hourly workers. Some people get paid straight cash, they're independent contractors. So, in 6,000 years, we tried to put government in charge of our lives. Didn't work for the title guy. Didn't work for the little guy. I'm not saying that I'm okay. I don't want to give the impression that I'm trying to say that the government should run our lives, right? But in some instances, they kind of do. They kind of do in some respects, right? Because they enact laws that we as everyday citizens have to abide by and affect, the way that we live. There are certain things that are put in, there are certain things that they run that affect that affect our everyday lives. So in some respects, they are responsible. They're responsible for a lot of things that we, a lot of the things that we either enjoy or benefit from in everyday life. So, this whole thing about, you don't want government involved. If that was the case, then why even have a government? Because the government is is the people that we elect to make sure that they are a checks and balance on everyday people, or else we would be having a Lord of the Flies situation. And if you don't understand the reference of Lord of the Flies, I highly recommend you read the book. I think that's what we would be. It would be a Lord of the Flies situation. There has to be some sort of that is why we have this democracy where we elect people to kind of represent our our issues, and be able to speak to those issues, to be able to formulate laws that will benefit us, that will put laws and regulations that will benefit us to be able to live a decent decent lives, right? So, in I I honestly am not really all that bothered by having a government. I'm really not all that bothered by it, because you know do I agree with everything? No, I don't agree with everything. Do I think there's things that can be done better? Yes, there are a lot of things that we can do better. But this is where we have to use our voice again and hold them accountable. We can't just say, "Oh, you done effed up," and don't hold them accountable for it. Like, if they're not doing what they're supposed to, vote them out. Vote them out. But in a lot of instances, we don't, because a lot of times, a lot of us don't pay attention to when they are being elected again. We need to stay on top of the issues that not only affect us locally and in our states, but we need to be also. We need to also be very cognizant of the things that happen to us domestically on a federal level. So I think if we do that, I think if we are more engaged, and we speak more to the issues that not only affect us but affect our neighbors, right? I think if we are more or vocal, by reaching out to our elected official, whether it's by phone or by letter, to address whatever issues that are on our minds, then I think if they start to see that people are really paying attention and are really being engaged, I think it'll force them to have to be more engaged and meet the needs. Because trust me, if they see a great number of people are holding them to task, they will have no choice but to perform, because they will understand that if they don't perform and give results, they could be out. And I think a lot of them, they're complacent because they don't think that they don't think that they're gonna get voted out. They're comfortable. We need to make them uncomfortable. We need to make our elected officials uncomfortable. We should not let them be comfortable. I think they've been comfortable for far too long. We need to make them uncomfortable. We need to force them to be uncomfortable, and to be more proactive in all of these backdoor deals, all of these, we're in talks, we're negotiating, all of that jibber jabber. They need to start bringing results. We need to have results. So a taxman is undefeated. You got that right. In America, profit is God. We need to return. That's what Mao, Pol Pot, Stalin said. Once they were given power, how did it work out? What is it that they? I know who they are. I know who those people are. But they were dictators, right? They didn't run a democracy. They were dictators. But I'm just saying, we have other democracies around us that have that have a lot of social programs that benefit their citizenry, and they're not, their citizens aren't suffering. They still have the ability to have capitalism in their respective countries. They're still able to thrive, but they their students go to school. They invest in the education of their young. Education should be a right, not a privilege. They invest in their future. Here in America, if you don't have the money, it's like if you don't have the money, then basically you're forced to have to, fend for scraps. Unless, you're a person, and not everybody is that way. Some people, have the hustle mentality. They know how to hustle. Not everybody has that skill. And being able to hustle and make things happen is not something that can necessarily always be taught. That is something that is something that is, inherently in you. You know what I mean? Unless it's something that you're mentored into, and not everybody is mentored into that. What's dumb is the people who don't want to amend any laws and want to live in 2020 like the freaking 1800s. You can't quote and cite views of people from 200 years ago and say it's applicable. That's true. Like, those men were, first of all, those men were dictators. They wasn't interested in a democracy, and they were only interested in instituting absolute power. That is not what our government is about. We elect our representatives. And all I'm saying is, the same way that you can elect your representative is the same way that you can vote them out. We just all have to be very proactive in making sure that they understand that we put them there, and the same way we can put them there, we can also take them out. And I think they have been comfortable and complacent in that they don't think that they're, they feel like they got job security. We need to let them know, don't get comfortable. The U.S. military, hey Chris H, the U.S. military costs $780 billion a year. Why? Because we got footprint almost everywhere. We got footprints almost everywhere. Why is that? Resources. It's money. It's resources. But then again, that's my own humble personal opinion based on, again, my own firsthand lived experience. Okay. But we have a footprint everywhere. All over Europe, in the Middle East, in Asia. We have a footprint everywhere. Central America, South America, Africa. We have a footprint everywhere. But a lot of the same places we have footprint, so does China. China also has its footprint pretty much everywhere. In Africa, in Europe, in the States, Canada, Central America. So it's a, checks and balances. That's why, and the best way for us to be able to have our presence in a lot of these places is through the U.S. military. And that is why the U.S. military costs so much money. It's because it costs money to have a base in another country. It costs money because you have to, it costs money to have military members. It costs money to have civilian employees in those regions. It costs money. So when you have military presence in a lot of different countries, there's a cost attached to that. What is the best way to do that? Reduce our presence in a lot of those countries. Will that happen? I don't see that for the foreseeable future that happening. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I don't. Uh, basic needs, healthcare for all. You're a radical Manal. I probably am on a list, and it is what it has to be. But I stand by my statement. I believe that should be a basic human right. I believe that if other advanced and modern countries can do it and it works, and it's not hurting them in any way, why can't we? We're supposed to be the richest country, and yet we have rampant homelessness. We don't have a healthcare system that works for everyone. You know what I mean? The cost of living goes up and up and up, but our basic living wage doesn't. Like, the disparities are way too off. Um, gotta get out for the blue. Thanks for your thoughts, man. I look forward to see you, Amy. Corporations control U.S. politicians. I agree with that. I agree with that. The Constitution has a Bill of Rights, says what the government can't do. The rest of the Constitution says what they must do. We don't let some temporarily elected official make those decisions. Well, the thing is, it's how they interpret the Constitution, and how they interpret the Bill of Rights, right? So we have a United States Supreme Court, we have federal courts, we have state courts, we have district courts. We have a lot of people who are placed in the judiciary to be able to interpret the laws of our lands. In the United States Supreme Court, in particular, is there to interpret the U.S. Constitution with respect to the laws that are enacted by our Congress, and how they either are in keeping with the U.S. Constitution, or how they go against the U.S. Constitution. A lot of things in the U.S. Constitution had to be amended, because at the time when the U.S. Constitution was written, it wasn't necessarily written to benefit the entire population. It was really there to benefit a select group of the population, right? And if you read the language of the U.S. Constitution, you'll see that the reason why we had to do amendments to the Constitution is to be able to expand a lot of the definitions and a lot of the things that were written in the U.S. Constitution, in order to expand them, and so that more groups of people could benefit from what is written in the Constitution, right? Life, liberty, that wasn't available to slaves. That wasn't available to the indigenous population when it was first written. So, when I say that things can be, laws can be introduced, laws can be amended, the Constitution can be amended, that's what I mean. There's a lot of things that don't benefit everyone, and it's not right, and it's not fair. And I think our elected officials should take that into account when they introduce legislation. Look at the Voting Rights Act. When the Voting Rights Act was when it was found that the Voting Rights Act was no longer needed, a lot of states immediately put policies and laws into place to disenfranchise a population of their state. Those things, I think those things, the Voting Rights Act needs to be made into a law. It should be a law of the land. It shouldn't just be something that can be taken away. Because the Voting Rights Act is what allows me to be able to vote. Not only as a woman, but as a Black person. It allows me to vote. If there's no Voting Rights Act, it more than likely might take away my right to vote. So that's just one thing I'm talking about. But there are a lot of things I think that legislation should be pushed and passed in order to become laws so that everyone, every citizen, I was born here, you know what I mean? And by virtue of the fact of me born here, I should have certain rights available to me. And the fact that I don't have certain basic rights available to me because I don't have the money, that's not fair. That's not right. That's not right. I'm not saying that I should be able to go out and buy expensive luxury things, but I should be able to go to the hospital and not have to worry about, how much is it going to cost me, or have to worry about if the bill is going to be so astronomical. Am I going to be able to make ends meet? Let's see. Remember, corporations are people, my friend. Yes, yes, corporations are people. What an absurd! It's absurd. It's absurd. That is why they were able to benefit from the first round of the CARES Act. It's absurd. That always reminds me of Romney's maybe women. Remember his binder of women. Sounds like mob rule. I wouldn't say that. Have you ever seen the yearly budget in a pie graph diagram? Housing 1%, science 1%, transportation 4%, education 3%, veteran 4%, labor 1%. The rest is defense. Yes. You want to know why it's defense? It's not necessarily because of war. Let me tell you again, and I'm going to sound like a broken record. Yes, because it costs money for there to be military presence in a lot of these countries. It's the easiest way for us, for America to have a footprint on the global stage, is to have the military there. It's the easiest way. And then most elected officials can say, hey, I'm going to go visit our troops. It gives them a reason to come in certain regions and visit. And trust me, when they come to visit, they probably spend maybe 10 minutes talking to the troops, and then they go about doing the real business that they came there to do. It's sad that the percentages of the things that should matter in this country are the things that get the least amount of attention. Every American citizen should be able to afford housing. Every American citizen should be able to afford housing. Homelessness is not a huge issue when you go to other countries. It's not. It's not. It's not. But it is here. Again, the quote unquote richest country. Education should be a right. not a privilege. How do we expect to have the next generation come up behind us if we are making it so hard for them to get the education that they deserve, that they have a right to? They should have education. Used to be free prior to the 80s. I think I tweeted it. I tweeted a video about that. Education used to be free up until the 80s. You want to know why we pay for education? Because a group of people decided that they didn't want black people being able to benefit from having a free education. So they decided to screw everybody over and make people pay for education just because they didn't want a group of people to get free education. Why? What are you so threatened by? Let me get off my soapbox. They didn't start out as dictators. Those countries you're talking about are dependent on U.S. security. If they had to protect themselves, what could they afford? Well, the reason why they depend on there is a cost attached to the protection that they get. Resources. They have resources. Do you think the U.S. will offer protection to certain countries just for the sake of being a friendly neighbor? No, there is a cost to that protection. That protection that they get comes at a cost. It comes at a cost. Now, it may come at a cost to their citizens, and they feel that it's a cost that they're willing to pay. But my thing is, why aren't you worried about what's happening in your own backyard? You're so busy meddling around in everybody else's backyard, but you're not taking care of business that you've got in your own backyard. Why? Because you're looking to, resources. That's what that is, resources. Russian had elections. They magically went the same way as it. Of course. They don't have a dictator. They don't have a dictatorship in Russia. They have an autocracy because their country is actually run by the oligarchs. Putin happens to be at the head of it, but their country is actually run by the oligarchs in Russia. So they all have a say in the running of Russia. So they actually operate as an autocracy. But even in that, yeah. Yeah. Well, the whole industrial complex and having global presence, that happened under Truman. The whole having a global presence. But my thing is, I think what happened, I'm not saying that this is what exactly happened, but I think what happened in wanting to have a global presence, I think the purpose of it, the purpose of it was lost when capitalism started to take place. When capitalism started to become more and more of a thing here in the U.S., I think our foreign policies dramatically shifted. I think they dramatically shifted. And then now we became like this, school, the playground bully, where we felt that we had to impose our values on everybody else, because if you weren't doing it the American way, you were wrong. I don't know. Too many activist judges, they're dangerous. I can read too. I would agree with that. Your your job in the judiciary is to interpret the laws and the statutes and the codes, whether you're in the state, whether you're at the local level, the state level, the district level, region level, or federal level. That is the main function of the judge, is to interpret the laws and the statutes, and pronounce, um, and make a decision based on that, right? From whatever evidence or arguments that are presented to said judges, they make a decision based on those things. So when you have judges that act outside of that, and that they start to interject things that are outside of their purview, they do become dangerous, because now they now start to embody someone who feels that, that they are the law, and you are not. You are not the law. You interpret the law, but you are not the law. Should Joe expand the courts, and should Chuck, if they win the Senate, blow up the filibuster? I'll take that first part. Should they expand the courts? Yes. I believe that they should expand the courts. And I'll give you my reasons why. We are a nation that is ever evolving, right? And because we are a nation that is ever evolving, I think they should select judges from different parts of this country that represent the different regions of this country, right? Because when you have a group of people that set precedents that affect an entire country, you want to have competing and differing ideas. I think that the justices that we have is too small a number for the population that we have. We have a population of over 330 million, I believe. And we have 9 justices, 6 of whom are conservative, are more on the conservative spectrum, and 3 who are more on the left, or less conservative. I think the 3 that are there are more centrist or center left. I don't believe that they are liberals. I don't believe those judges are liberals. I do believe that they are more center left. That's just my personal opinion, based on a lot of their a lot of the briefs that they, when they make a decision and they write. From what I, when I read what they write in their decisions, that is how I am forming that opinion. So I think that they should expand the courts. Another thing that I think they should do, I don't think that judges in the Supreme Court should serve for life. I am against that. I may be in the minority in that opinion, but it's my opinion. And the reason why I think that they should have term limits is because, again, we are a society that is ever evolving. And because we are a society that is ever evolving, the justices should reflect that. When you have somebody that has been in for decades and decades and decades and decades, they tend to, whether intentionally or not, start to form a stance, right? Because they already come with their own values into the Supreme Court, and so they already have a lens through which they view things. And the US Constitution is a living, breathing document, meaning that they can always um, um, make amendments to it in order to address uh, whatever issues or whatever disparities that may exist that the original document does not necessarily address. Again, because the US Constitution was written in the 1770s. We are now in 2020. The issues that were prevalent back in the 1770s are not the same as they are in the 2020s, which is why the US Constitution is a living document, because we can amend it to meet the needs of our current society. And I think that the US Supreme Court should also reflect that. Just the same as I believe that all Congress should have term limits. I don't think you should stay there until you die, or until I don't I do not agree with that. I think that you should be there for you can serve maybe 4 terms, or maybe you can serve 6 terms, and after you've served those minimum amount of terms, you should go and give somebody else the seat. We need to rotate people out again, because when you have people that have been there for years and years and years, they start to get comfortable. They get comfortable in their chair. So when they get comfortable in their chair, they get to start being selective about what they want to address and what they don't want to address. I've heard arguments that if people get in there and they know that they have only they feel like they have to that they don't have to run for their positions, then they are less likely to do their job. I disagree with that, because if we haven't seen anything over these last few decades, I mean, if you've been following the politics of our country for however many years you've been following it, you'll see that there's people that have been there for years. And if you look at their records, you have to sit back and wonder, how is this person still in Congress? How are they still there? You want to know how they're still there? Nobody voted them out. Nobody vote them out. And since nobody votes them out, they stay. I think if we were to institute some sort of a term limit, that would have to force them to if they want to be able to go again or serve again, or let them know this is the only amount of time that you can serve, then I think then they probably will be more inclined to do something that's more productive, to be more productive than to feel comfortable. Because if you don't feel like you don't got nothing to lose, then you get comfortable and you get complacent. So that's just my opinion on with respect to the courts. I think that it should be expanded to reflect the entire country, not just a select part of the country. And I think that they should have term limits for the US Supreme Court in order to rotate people out as our society evolves. That's just, again, my own personal opinion. To the second point, should he blow up the filibuster? Yeah. Yes. The filibuster is exasperating, and it serves no true purpose other than to piss people off and be an annoyance. We don't need that. We don't need that. I don't think we need the filibuster. That's just my own personal opinion. If somebody has a different opinion, please let me know so I can read your thoughts. Maybe you might give me a new perspective. And also, please let me know if you think that the courts should be expanded or if it should be kept the same. I would love to hear your opinion as well. Um, let's see. We have 13 U.S. territories. Them should make them states. That's 26 Senate seats. They should be ruthless like the. I agree. All of those U.S. territories should be states. Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, what is it? I think Guam. I think, is it Samoa? I'm not sure. Is Samoa a U.S. territory? Yeah. All of those places should be states. Washington, D.C. should be a state and have a Senate representation. That's crazy to me. They should have Senate representation. That's not back to normal. No, I don't want to go back to normalcy. I want there to be effective change. There has to be effective change. There has to be. We cannot go back to being complacent. Honestly, I don't see Joe ever entering the White House. I see America about to be knee deep in civil war. I don't agree. He's going to go into the White House. There's not going to be a civil war. There probably might be skirmishes, but I believe those skirmishes will be quelled. I don't see a major. I don't see a civil war because a huge part of the population is not even entertaining being in a civil war with the other part of the population. And those that want to incite civil war, they're just putting themselves in a position where they're going to be, if that's the route you want to go, good luck. I don't think it's going to end well. It's not going to end well for them. I don't think so. I don't think it'll end well. Let's see. We need to up the science to make decisions because of the facts and not believe. I agree. We need to encourage more science. I totally agree with that. But again, our society is not. First of all, we need to make education available for everyone. People shouldn't go into debt trying to get an education or trying to learn a skill. They shouldn't go into debt for that. It should be given. it should be something that is attainable and given and subsidized. We pay the taxes. I don't know. There won't be civil war, Jake. The Republicans are too scared actually do anything besides cry about shit, and the leftists won't fight on moral ground. We aren't getting any war anytime soon. Well, not civil war anytime soon. We're not getting any civil war anytime soon. That's for sure. I think I read there are 4 times more of an abandoned homes than there are. Yes. I was watching a video there's a gentleman here on YouTube named Louis Rossman. He is a New Yorker, and he was talking about here in New York we have a lot of abandoned buildings in the city, and anybody who lives in New York City could tell you that we have a lot of abandoned buildings, a lot of them, and they're owned either by corporations or by individuals, and some of them are for sale and some of them are for rent. Now, let's say, the city were to say, hey, why don't we just renovate this building and make it a place for homeless people, to house some of the homeless, and we can create, work with health officials or mental health officials and social workers in order to kind of help, those that are homeless and those that are on the street to be able to reacclimate them to being more productive members of society, right? Instead of calling cops, we address the issue, and the issue is it's a social issue. It's a social issue in that there is a homeless person, and that person may or may not have mental issues or addiction issues, right? Those are not issues that the police should handle. Those are issues that a social, a health department, the social services department, those are issues that they need to address, right? But more often than not, the police are the ones that are called. And so this is why we need reformation of public safety, right? Our public safety needs to be reformed. We need to address that, and we need to allocate funds to social services to be able to address homelessness. Maybe the funding can go into renovating a lot of these abandoned buildings and make them into apartments to house a lot of these homeless people, and have them enrolled, and have them have case managers and social workers that can help them to reacclimate to address whatever their either mental issue is or whatever their addiction issues are, and to help them to go back to being productive members of society. So again, but we live in a capitalist world, and so I hope that the Department of HSS will look into that and take that into consideration when introducing legislation and creating policies to be able to address that across the nation. The establishment on both sides, like Joe, conservatives have been like the Republicans for a minute. They're mad and they feel like they're being brushed off. I think this is the downside of having a two-party system, right? Even within your party, you're going to have differing views and opinions, right? And so when you have a two majority party system, this is what happens. And you're going to have defectors. You're going to have defectors, and you're going to have dissenters within your own party, right? Same thing with the Republican Party. You have a part of the Republican Party that's becoming more autocratic, and you have the conservative part of the Republican Party that is just that hasn't strayed from the party of Lincoln. So you have and then you have the Tea Party people in between there. You have the Tea Party population within the Republican Party. If there is another one, I don't know about it. And then in the Democratic side, you have the progressives, which are now a sect of the Democratic Party, and then you have the centrists that are considered a part of the Democratic Party, and then you have the more center left, right? So I think that's the downside of having a two-party system. They don't. You're always going to have a group of people that's going to, and that's a reflection of an evolving society. Our society is evolving. Values are changed over time. The needs of our society is changing with the population that is up and coming, and so representation in our Congress has to reflect that. The Congress that we now have does not represent the population as a whole, and that is a problem, and that is where most of the conflict lies. I thought the GI Bill excluded minorities from it. I may be wrong. Well, you are correct. It did exclude the minorities. It doesn't any longer. It back in World War II, when all the black people and all black people and non-whites who fought in World War II were given the GI Bill. Not only were they given the GI Bill, they were also given homes. They were given homes. They were given the GI Bill to go and earn a degree, and they were actually given job placement. All of the black people that came back from World War II were not able to take advantage of the GI Bill, nor did they receive homes as their white counterparts. And so they had to go and go through public schooling in order for them to get their education, and they had to work to be able to buy their homes. And so the GI Bill did not benefit all of the service members that fought in World War II. I believe with the enactment of the Civil Rights Act, that opened the door for minorities to be able to take advantage of the benefits that they were denied prior to that act. Now, 10 years later after that, education no longer became free. You had to pay for it. So there's that. There's that. Public schools were free. Community colleges and state colleges were free. Private institutions were not free, but community colleges and state colleges were free. And that the video I watched said, and that was up until the 70s. Now, private colleges like your Ivy League colleges and your other private universities, those you had to pay for. Those were not free. Those were not free. When you start trying to add religion and gods into the human condition, everyone suffers. That's a historical fact. Believe in your own faith is one thing, but you can't try to mass push it on people. I agree with that. I am an unapologetic Christian. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I accepted him as my Lord and Savior. With that said, I'm not here to push my Christianity on anyone, because that is not my, that is not my edict. The two laws that were prescribed to us as Christians is to love God with all our hearts and mind. And the second is to love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And those are the two things that I try every day to exercise. Because if I love God, I try to do things that, fall within his, that please him and live and try to live according to his principles, right? If I love my neighbor, I won't do anything to cause harm to my neighbor. I would not do anything to my neighbor that I would not want done to myself. And so those are the principles that I live by as a Christian. And I'm unapologetic about that. But that doesn't mean I don't respect anybody else. I respect everybody's choice to either believe or not believe in God. It's not for me to decide, that's not for, and I'm not here to make you feel bad about it. That's not my place to do that. It's not my place to tell you how to live your life, what to do with your life. That is not my place. Unless you ask me my opinion, or you ask me you ask me to share my thoughts, and I will share them. And that's it. The decision is always yours, right? The decision, it will always be yours. You have to make the decisions that affect your life. I cannot do that for you. But I think I think Christianity gets a bad rap because we have certain Christians that feel the need to impose their beliefs on everyone else. And that's not what Christianity is. You know, if you walk in love and you deal with people in love, that is how you share your Christianity. You don't tell people if they don't do this, then there's consequence. There's consequences for everything that you do. That's just life. Cause and effect. There's consequences for everything. So, you know, if you are truly a Christian, you operate from a place of love with everyone, and that is how you share your Christianity. I don't share my Christianity by telling people that they have to be saved or else they're going to burn in an eternal fire. That's I'm not, no, I don't think that's a very attractive thing to tell anybody anyway. But yes, there are consequences for your actions, right? If you do bad things, more than likely you're going to suffer a bad consequence. If you do good things, more than likely you will suffer but you will enjoy good consequence. So that's all I got to say about that. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but that's just the way that I see it. My grandparents' yearly tuition was $300. See? You see that? $300. Dang. Not even books and food included. Nope. Russia has free healthcare. They are an autocracy, and even they have social healthcare. I'm just saying. Now, I'm not saying that I want to live in an autocracy. I do not. I much prefer to live in a democracy, but I'm just saying I don't understand why the United States doesn't have a social healthcare system. Also, college isn't necessarily a great route to make a living. The trades are a better option for many people. I agree. Obama had said that himself. I remember Obama speaking somewhere, I don't remember where, and he said, listen, higher education is not for everyone. Not everybody is meant to go to college. A lot of people will go to a trade school or a vocational school, right? And just because you go to a trade school or in a vocational school to learn a specific skill doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to earn a livable wage. A degree should mean that you earn more. I don't know. Oh, I know I'm far behind. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to read everybody's comments. Thank you so much, Jake, for coming through. I really appreciate it. I hope that you and I can get together and actually, if you want, the next time I have one of these, that you will come and have a discussion with me so we can both put our point of views up. I'm gonna stick around for another 10 minutes, and then because we're coming up on 3. I didn't even notice that we're coming up on 3 hours. Yeah. Your dad went to an Ivy League and your mom went to some religious school. Yeah, so they had to have paid for that. Those cost money. One day, probably in 20 years, I'll have a 2019. Speaking of Tesla, Why do you think there was a whole issue in Bolivia, right? Because Bolivia has lithium. And the person that was ousted by the regime that was in Bolivia, which I believe the United States had something to do with that, was because of the lithium that they have in Bolivia. And guess who benefits from that resource of lithium? If you say the company starts with a T and ends with an A, you would be right. Guess another company that also benefits from that lithium. If you were to say a company that starts with an A and ends with an E, you would be right. So, but that leader that got ousted felt that the people of Bolivia should benefit from it. Not only a select few, but the entire population of people should benefit from that resource. And because he said that, he was ousted. Another great way that America has a way of interjecting itself for the purpose of having resource. Why? Because we feel that we have a right to things when in actuality, we don't. It's not ours. And we should pay a fair price for their resource. It's their resource. I think when you impose mortality on or morality on people, whether it's spiritual, humanistic, you're a zealot. Zealots are dangerous. I agree. You don't. It doesn't serve any true purpose other than to make you look like a fool. In high school, my parents bought their textbooks, which were old and used, at the hardware store. And then Amazon came along. And every college student who discovered Amazon bought all their used books. And Amazon, who started off as a bookstore, is now a $1 trillion company. Capitalism at its best. College and trade schools were not free for them, and they were public colleges. Really? Because the small video that I watched said that community colleges and state colleges were free. It didn't say anything about trade schools, though. It didn't say anything about a trade school, because a trade school is a vocational school, and I know all vocational schools cost money because you have to pay for the material and for the things that you're learning on, the tools and the all the stuff that you have to do some hands-on learning with. I know that, but so I didn't hear anything about trade schools being free, but I do remember saying that colleges were free up until the 1970s, except for Ivy League and private colleges or private universities, whichever you want to call it. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I really, I want to thank everybody for coming in and having a discussion with me. I didn't get to everybody's comments. Sorry about that. But I'm really glad that all of us were able to come together and have this conversation and have this discussion, and for you guys allowing me to express my thoughts out loud. I want to, wow, that is nuts. I might have to go back and double check that. They said that it was all community colleges and state universities. If it was state or a local community college, it was free up until the 70s. Except for, again, like I said, the private stuff. Maybe it wasn't all. Maybe it was by state, because community colleges are state run, state funded. They're by state, so maybe it might have been the state. Um, yeah, I think we can have discussions even though we don't agree. And I don't want us to agree all the time because we can't learn from each other if we all agree on everything. There has to be some sort of disagreement in order to have actual intelligent debate, and to get, opposing points of view so that we can actually debate on the issues. Um, so I think it's healthy for us to be able to do that. And so I really appreciate all of you coming in and indulging me and having this discussion. Um, next week, Tuesday, same bat time, I'll come back on, and maybe we can be more specific, talk more specifically about um, elections and different electorates, and how we can uh, be more proactive in learning about those particular electorates at our local and at our state level, and how we can learn more about how their elections work and how we can be more involved and engaged in those elections. Because, like I said, the reason why a lot of these people are there for so long is because we don't vote them out. We need to start pushing to we need to start paying more attention, and being and holding those people accountable, whether it's through writing them or calling their offices, going on their websites to see what policies that they're working on, see what their voting record is with respect to different policies and legislation that is presented both in Congress and in the Senate. We can look at their record. We can look at what their voting trends are, and we can look to see what they have done in order to truly be representative of their constituents. And if they're not doing the job that they were elected for, vote them out. So I would really like to get more in depth in talking about that in an effort to try to drive engagement in our democratic process, and to truly make it a democracy that truly works for everyone. And this is just my way of trying to do that, because for a very long time, I won't lie, I got into the mode of, just following orders. And when you get into a space where you just follow orders, you don't question, you tend to just take things as they come. But now that I live more of a civilian life, I felt like I was still, in the military and just taking whatever the government dishes out. And I don't have to. I shouldn't have to. Um, I need to be more engaged. I need to learn more. I need to be more aware. Because I have nieces and nephews that are coming up, and I have to be engaged so that they can get engaged, because it's their world as much as it is mine. I'm on the other half. They're just coming up. And if we want to leave a better world for the ones that are coming up, we have to start being the change that we want to see. And we have to have leadership that also reflects that. So come back on Thursday, where I will be doing another live with Amy Blackfire, Nessie, and AK, where we're gonna give our final thoughts on the last 4 episodes of Blood of Zeus. So I'll be excited to see you guys come back for that. And then on Saturday, I'm gonna come do just a relaxed type of live. where I want to talk about some of the things that I'm thinking about doing next year. I don't expect that to be very long. So Thursday, be sure to come back. We're going live at 3 p.m. on Thursday for Blood of Zeus. And that's all I've got. I hope everybody has a good night. Thank you again for coming in and chatting with me. And I'll see you on Thursday. Bye.